are to be understood. The Buddha does not pass away, the Dharma does not decline. It is for the purpose of ripening sentient beings that the Buddha appears to have passed away. Inconceivable is the Blessed One, the Buddha. The Tathagata is the body of permanence. In order to benefit sentient beings, he shows a variety of works in fine array. When the Buddha was giving his farewell address, he said something to this effect, that those who see the Dharma see me even after my passing. The statement may be regarded as confirming the common psychology of immortality. No wonder, then, that the doctrine of a dual body came to be propounded soon after the nirvana, the one as Rupakaya and the other as Dharmakaya. So we read further in the Suvarpa Prabhakasa that the body of the Buddha is as solid as a diamond, and what is manifested of him is his body of transformation. And that the Dharmakaya is indeed enlightenment, and the Dharmadhatu is the Tathagata. These two notions, Dharmakaya, unchangeable like a diamond, constituting the substance of enlightenment, and a body subject to change and transformation, must have been in the minds of early Buddhists, though it does not follow that they were conscious of the two notions as distinctly separable as we see them in the Suvarna Prabhakasa and other sutras. They were probably only vaguely conscious of the difference between the Buddha that had passed away and the Buddha whose presence with them they could not somehow ignore. Before these two Buddhas came to be conceived in terms of body of sentient beings. As the ignorant refuse to believe me owing to their erroneous views, I show my nirvana in order to bring them to a state of maturity. Chapter 2, on the life of the Tathagata. This passage is lacking in the Sanskrit text and regarded as at least two aspects of it, eternal and temporal. So with the doctrine of the triple body. Early Mahayana Buddhists thought of Dharmata-Buddha and Mula-tathagata and Vipaka-Buddha and Nirmaya-Buddha as distinguishable. But in the earlier Mahayana sutras such as the Lankavatara, in which we are at present chiefly interested, no Kaya doctrine appears. Buddhas, indeed, are variously spoken of, but not as belonging to the Kaya system. For the Nirmaya-Buddha is not the same as the Nirmanakaya, nor is the Dharmata-Buddha the same as the Dharmakaya. To determine the qualification of a Buddha in terms of Kaya is further advanced in thought than merely designating a Buddha as the Nirmanika or otherwise. Even Nagarjuna is confusing in his discrimination of different Buddhas as belonging to the different Kayas. He mentions two kinds of Kayas, but the distinction is not quite clear, and besides they are variously designated. The clear-cut conception of the Kaya seems to have started with the Yogacara school headed by Asanga and his predecessors. Dharmakaya is often referred to in the Lankavatara and other early sutras but not as one of the members of the Trikaya. The Lankavatara speaks of the Tathagata's Dharmakaya, of the inconceivable Dharmakaya, and of the Dharmakaya as will body. But in all these cases there is no reference whatever to the conception of the Trikaya or any Kaya, except that it means something substantially constituting Tathagatahood or Buddhahood. The passages in the Lankavatara where the term Dharmakaya is found are as follows. 1. Where the attainment of the Tathagatagata in the heavens is spoken of as the result of the understanding of the highest spiritual truths belonging to Mahayana Buddhism. Dharmakaya is used in apposition with Tathagata as something that transcends the nature of the five dharmas. Being furnished with things issuing from the highest knowledge, and itself abiding in the realm of magical appearances. Here we may consider all these terms synonymous: Dharmakaya, Tathagatagata, and Tathagata. Tathagatagata is referred to also when the bodhisattva attains to a certain form of meditation whereby he finds himself in accord with the suchness of things and its transformations. The Tathagatagata is realized when all his mental activities conditionally working are extinguished and there takes place a radical revolution in his consciousness. The Kaya is no less than the Dharmakaya. 3. When the Bodhisattva is described as being anointed like a great sovereign by all the Buddhas as he goes beyond the final stage of Bodhisattvaship, mention is made of Dharmakaya which he will finally realize. This Kaya is characterized as Vasavardhan and made synonymous with Tathagata. In Buddhism, Vasavardhan is used in the sense of supreme sovereignty whose will is deed, since there is nothing standing in the way of its rulership. The Dharmakaya may here be identified with Samagakaya, the second member of the Trikaya. Here the Bodhisattva is sitting in the lotus palace decorated with gems of all sorts. Surrounded by bodhisattvas of similar qualifications and also by all the Buddhas whose hands are extended to receive the Bodhisattva here. It goes without saying that the Bodhisattva here described has comprehended the Mahayana truth that there is no self-substance in objects external or internal, and that he is abiding in the full realization of the truth most inwardly revealed to his consciousness. 4. Dharmakaya is found again in connection with the moral provisions obtainable in a realm of pure spirituality. The term is now coupled with asantya, inconceivable, as well as with vaifovartita. 5. Where all the Buddhas are spoken of as of the same character in 4 ways, the sameness of the body is regarded as one of them. All the Buddhas who are Tathagatas, the enlightened ones, and the Arhats, share in the nature of sameness as regards the Dharmakaya and their material body with the 32 marks and the 80 minor ones. Except when they assume different forms in different worlds to keep all beings in good discipline. In the light of the later developed theory of the Trikaya, all the 3 bodies are traceable in this passage of the Lankavatara. Besides the Dharmakaya expressly referred to, we have also Samagakaya solemnized with all the physical features of a superior man. And also the Nirmalnikaya, the body of transformation, in response to the needs of sentient beings who are inhabiting each in his own realm of existence. 6. Anutpada is said to be another name for the Tathagata's Manomaya Dharmakaya. Manomaya is will-made, and as is explained elsewhere, a bodhisattva is able to assume a variety of forms according to his wishes just as easily as one can in thought pass through or over all kinds of physical obstructions. Does then the Dharmakaya will-made mean? Not the Dharmakaya in itself, but the Dharmakaya in its relation to a world of multitudinousness where it may take any forms it likes according to conditions? In this case the Dharmakaya thus qualified is no other than the Nirmanakaya. So we read further that the Tathagata's other names are a legion in this world, only that sentient beings fail to recognize them even when they hear them. 7. The Tathagata's Dharmakaya is compared to the indestructibility of the sands of the Ganges, which remain ever the same when they are put in the fire. Further down, the Tiang translation speaks of the Dharmakaya having no body whatever, and for that reason it is never subject to destruction. In the Sanskrit text the corresponding term is Sarara or Sararavat, and not Dharmakaya, but from the context we can judge that Sarara is here used synonymously with Dharmakaya. In fact, the Way and the Sung translation also have, that is, Dharmakaya, here. In Buddhism, Sarara is something solid and indestructible that is left behind when the dead body is consumed in fire, and it was thought that only holy men leave such indestructible substance behind. This conception is probably after an analogy of Dharmakaya forever living and constituting the spiritual substance of Buddhahood. 8. In the Gatha concluding this paragraph on the sands of the Ganges, the Buddha's Buddhahood instead of Dharmakaya is made the subject of comparison to the sands which are free from all possible faults inherent in things relative. There is no doubt that the Buddhahood too means the Dharmakaya of the Tathagata, only differently designated. From these references we can see that the idea of Dharmakaya is not wanting in the Lankavatara, and that it is used not in the sense of the Dharmakaya of the triple body dogma. No doubt the underlying notion of it is here, which contributed later to the formulation of the fully developed dogma. In the following pages the different forms of the Buddhas as they are mentioned in the Lankavatara will be examined with the view of ascertaining how far the Lankavatara has paved the way to the triple body doctrine. No triple body yet, but a Buddha Trinity. When different Buddha personalities are distinguished in the Lankavatara, it is done so in terms of Buddha and not in terms of Kaya. The Buddhas are different as Buddhas and not as belonging to any one of the Trinity. This distinction is important, I think, in tracing the development of the Trikaya theory, which did not formulate itself until some time after Nagarjuna. As was stated before, when the term Dharmakaya is used in the Lankavatara, it is not as one of the Trikaya, but simply in contrast to the physical and therefore destructible aspect of Buddhahood. The Dharmakaya, therefore, means the Buddha personality when it is perfectly identified with the Dharma, or the absolute truth itself making up the essence of Buddhism. What corresponds in the Lankavatara to the idea of Dharmakaya as a member of the Trinity is found in that of Dharmata-Buddha, which is also designated as Tathagata jnana-Buddha or as Mula-tathagata. Dharmata-Buddha is sometimes shortened into Dharma-Buddha, but they both mean practically the same thing. Dharmata is translated in Chinese as Fa Xing, the nature of things. And, therefore, Dharmata-Buddha means the Buddha whose nature is reality itself, and from whom all other Buddha personalities flow. In the following passage the Lankavatara way of treating different Buddhas is clearly delineated. And again, O Mahamedi, all things come into existence when we distinguish between individuality and generality as we are bound by habit energy to see things projected outside our own minds. And owing to this false discrimination to which we are attached thinking it to be real, we have a variety of illusory beings and scenes. While we cling to them as real they are not at all attainable as such. This is what is preached by the Buddha who flows out of the ultimate essence. And again, O Mahamedi, the evolution of false discrimination takes place from clinging to relative knowledge as final. It is like a man skilled in magical art, who, depending upon grass, trees, shrubs, or creepers, projects all kinds of beings and forms. When a magically created man takes a form like a substantial being, it is variously perceived and falsely judged by the onlookers. Being thus perceived, O Mahamedi, there is yet nothing substantial here. Even so, O Mahamedi, depending on relative knowledge there is false discrimination whereby the mind discriminates variously and perceives particular forms. False discrimination, O Mahamedi, arises from habit energy which makes one cling to the particularizing aspect of existence, and we then have what is known as false discrimination. Such, O Mahamedi, is the discourse by the Buddha who flows out of ultimate essence. Further, O Mahamedi, the Dharmata-Buddha defines the extent of self-realization which has nothing to do with modes of mentation. Further, O Mahamedi, the Nirmana-Buddha who suffers transformation defines functions and fields D1 ferently allotted to charity, moral conduct, meditation, tranquilization, various kinds of wisdom and knowledge, aggregates, dadas, ayatanas, emancipations, and vijnanas, showing how these things in their nature far surpass the materialistic views of the philosophers. Further, O Mahamedi, the Dharmata-Buddha is free of support. He is self-sufficing, disengaged from all doings, senses, measurements, and appearances. He is not within reach of the stupid-minded, Sravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and philosophers, who are engrossed in clinging to the notion of an ego substance. For this reason, O Mahamedi, you ought to devote yourself to bring about the excellent state of self-realization and be disengaged from the views which regard your own mental projections as objectively real. The three kinds of Buddha here distinguished as the Dharmata, the Nishyanda, and the Nirmana apparently correspond to the Trinity of Dharmakaya, Samagakaya, and Nirmayakaya. The Dharmata is the absolute essence of the Buddhahood, which is beyond all forms of limitation and of which nothing is the predicible. It is realized only within mind. Whereas the Nishyanda which flows out from the Dharmata, owing to the habit energy or memory accumulated in it from time immemorial, manifests a world of particulars where, by such categories as individuality and generality, relative knowledge is generated, and depending on this knowledge false discrimination is made possible, which makes erroneous judgments on things only magically existing. That is to say, the conception of the Nishyanda means the beginning of a world of individual objects. Niskayanda or Nisyanda, from the root syand, literally means flowing down, or flowing out, and the Buddha thus prefixed is sometimes translated in the Way and the Tiang text as, Paufo, or recompense Buddha. While in the Sung it is depending Buddha. Not only is there no connection in sense between Niskayanda and Samphaga, which means enjoyment, but the definition given in the Lankavatara to the Nishyanda Buddha as to his functions seems to be quite different from the nature of the Samagakaya as we ordinarily have it. It is strange that the two Chinese texts have occasionally for Niskayanda, and at the same time for Vipaka also. Where Vipakas Dha Buddha and Vipakaja Buddha are rendered equally by Vipaka means maturing, or cooking, and may be translated as reward, or compensating, but how did Nishyanda come to be Pao as much as Vipaka? And how did the Nishyanda-Buddha and the Vipaka-Buddha come to be considered as corresponding to the second member of the Kaya Trinity? Or is there really a correspondence between the three ideas? The reason why Nishyanda and Vipaka came to be rendered Pao by the Chinese translators is perhaps this. They both belong to the category of cause and effect. In Buddhist philosophy, 5 kinds of effects are enumerated against 6 kinds of causes, and Vipaka and Nishyanda are 2 of the 5 effects, the others being Purushakara, Adhipati, and Visumayaga. By Vipaka, effect is meant that the nature of an effect is not the same as the nature of the cause. When a man does something good, he is rewarded with something enjoyable. Pleasure and goodness are not of the same character, but there is an intimate relationship between them as cause and effect. In the case of the Nishyanda, however, cause and effect are of a similar nature. An act of goodness tends to produce the disposition to do more good. An effect of the same quality flows out of its cause. As thus the Nishyanda and the Vipaka are considered as expressing different forms of effect or reward or something that flows out of a cause. They came to be designated as result, though somewhat indiscriminately. With all that we can say about it, however, it does not seem to be quite correct to regard Nishyanda as meaning Pao. For the idea explicitly expressed in the Lankavatara is that of flowing out, or depending on, and not of being rewarded. The teaching of the Nishyanda-Buddha, which concerns with the individualizing phase of existence, is derived or flows out of the nature of reality, as we plainly read in the phrase, Dharmata-Nishyanda. That there is no idea of enjoyment in the makeup of the Nishyanda-Buddha is evident. But there is something in the Lankavatara remotely suggesting the idea where the Nishyanda-Buddha is spoken of as being in the Akanishtha heaven. Read the following: It is like the Alayavijnana, O Mahamadi, which makes manifest instantly a world of corporeality, homestead.